everybody. Welcome to our virtual Cooking Matters in Your Community workshop. Today's topic is protein and dairy. I'm Cheryl. I am a program specialist here at the Tarrant Area Food Bank. With me is Becca, program coordinator here at the food bank, and she will be doing culinary instruction after I'm done with my part. So we'll talk to her in a minute. So on your Eventbrite page, there should be a link for you to download the handouts for this program, and you'll be wanting to refer to those as we go along. You also are going to be able to chat some questions in the chat box. Just be aware that today's information is basic nutrition. So if you have anything specific for your medical condition or a specific diet, you're going to have to refer those to your doctor or a registered dietitian. Okay, so I'd like to start out with a little bit of review of My Plate. Some of you may have seen My Plate before. This is a basic guideline to show you the 5 basic food groups that we need to be consuming every day for good health. And if we look at those groups, every group has a little different kind of a slogan that goes along with it. Fruits and vegetables are going to be half the plate. And the protein group that we see is relatively small. So most of our diets are actually a little on the protein side and not so much on the fruits and vegetables. So this leaves some room for improvement. So within each group, we also want to vary the types of foods that we're having. So like in the fruits and vegetables, we encourage a variety of colors. The colors indicate different nutrients. And we're going to have the same thing in our protein group. We're going to suggest a variety of protein sources. So on the back of My Plate, this shows the number of recommended servings for each food group per day. And this is for an average person. Your needs may vary according to your gender, your age, and your level of activity. So today we're talking about the protein group specifically. So what is protein for? Most of us think about protein when we're thinking about our muscles, and that's true. Our muscles are protein. However, protein is needed in our bodies in a variety of ways. It helps us to heal our wounds. It helps our immunity. It helps us to feel full when we've had a meal. And protein is a component of just about all of our body's cells, so it's good to have that every day. Now, our serving sizes of protein we saw were relatively small, and we need about 5 to 7 ounces per day. It's good to spread that out for a little at each meal, because like I said, that's going to help you feel full at each meal and help to kind of regulate your blood sugar at every meal. And we can have a variety of sources of protein. So we can have lean, skinless poultry like turkey and chicken. Most of the fat's in the skin, so we want the lean type. We can have ground meat. We can select those that are 90% lean or better. We can also have plant proteins like beans, peas, legumes. Those are great high fiber sources of protein. So if you want to cook and eat several times, you can cook something large like roasted chicken, have a large pork loin, roast that once and get several meals out of that. A good thing about plant proteins like beans is that they're already cooked. You don't have to cook those. You can keep those in your pantry, and they're ready to go for a meal. They're ready to go in like a soup or a stir fry or with pasta. And you can also have canned like chicken in your pantry also for a quick meal. Throw that together. So another protein that we've got is seafood. And of course, seafood is a great high quality protein. And we recommend that you have seafood at least twice a week. Seafood is really good for your heart and your brain. You may have heard that already. So there's some mild versions of seafood like tilapia that are very inexpensive, and you can purchase these frozen. They're very inexpensive that way. They're frozen usually very soon right after they are caught, sometimes right down at the dock as soon as they get them off the boat. So when they're frozen like this, they're very easy to use because you can just pull out a fillet, thaw it in your refrigerator overnight, and just use it like that. So it's, we can also get it in canned form. We can get canned tuna, canned salmon. Canned salmon with the bones is going to have some calcium too. We'll talk about that in a minute. And this is a good choice for using with salads, sandwich spreads, something to keep on hand. So if you are wanting to cook it, you're not sure how, it's really easy to cook. It takes just a few minutes. You have to be careful not to overcook it sometimes, but it's really quick. If it's thawed, you can just put some lemon pepper on it, throw it in the skillet, turn it over, and it's pretty much done. So there is a Cooking Matters recipe that you can try if you like breaded fish. This is our baked flaked fish. And I believe we're going to try to include a link for that later. Or you can also get that at cookingmatters.org. And it's suggested here you try that with sweet potato fries, and I can tell you I love those too. And that recipe is also available at cookingmatters.org, or we'll have a link for that. So now we're going to turn to our next group of the day, which is our dairy group. Okay, so dairy, we can enjoy this in a variety of ways. It doesn't have to just be milk. We can have yogurt. We can have moderate amounts of cheese. One thing that's real popular right now is smoothies, and smoothies are a great way to get more dairy into your diet. And we encourage that you make low-fat or no-fat options with dairy, skim milk, non-fat yogurt, things like this. And if you have a smoothie, throw in some fruit or maybe some vegetable like spinach, and then you can get another food group into your daily routine. And that will be a good thing. So why do we talk about dairy? What does dairy have that we need? Dairy, of course, has calcium. Calcium we need throughout our life, not just as we're kids and growing. We need to maintain our skeletal structure throughout our lives. And a lot of us are not consuming enough calcium. Calcium is also an electrolyte, and that means that it helps our body's electrical system. It helps our muscles contract properly, including our heart. So dairy isn't the only way we can get calcium. We can get it from other sources. So often products are fortified, means they've added calcium. Some of our soy milks, almond milks, rice milks are fortified with calcium. Orange juice is a great form when it's fortified with calcium. Some cereals are fortified. And then there's leafy greens. They also have calcium. It's not quite as well absorbed as the calcium in dairy, but it is another good source of calcium. So we've been talking about fats and low-fat things. So we also need to address what are good fats, what are bad fats. How can we identify these? And do we even need fat? Well, we do. Fat helps us to absorb certain vitamins. It helps our body to synthesize some hormones. And it also cushions our internal organs. But we need to be knowledgeable about the kinds of fats that we are consuming. So there are good fats and bad fats. So first we'll talk about some of the good fats. You may have heard about fish having good fats, omega-3s. Good fats are unsaturated, and these are typically liquid at room temperature. You think about olive oil, canola oil, the fats that are in nuts and seeds. These are the heart-healthy oils, and they're going to lower your bad LDL cholesterol, decrease your risk of some cardiovascular diseases. So these are things that we can have on a daily basis. Now, the ones we want to watch out for are the saturated fats. Saturated fats are the unhealthy fats. These are usually solid at room temperature. You can recognize them on a piece of meat. They're going to be that white strip around the edge. It's nice and solid, and you see it in marbled meat as well. These are the kind of fats that are not good for your heart and circulatory system. They will raise your cholesterol. That can contribute to coronary artery disease. So we're going to try and limit these as much as we can. And it's also in fried food. And if you see the word hydrogenated oils, that's an indication of saturated fat. And the worst one you may have heard of is trans fats. So our government is trying to just get that out of our food supply because it really does contribute to coronary artery disease by raising our cholesterol. It also tends to lower our good cholesterol, our HDL. So these are fats that are usually found in highly processed foods. So we can find out by looking at our labels and avoid all those with trans fats. So reading labels, we encourage everybody to get into this habit, because this is the only way you're going to be able to make an educated choice about your foods. On the nutrition facts, you're going to be able to see if there is any trans fat, how much saturated fat is there, if there's any unsaturated fat. And then you can compare foods for sugars and salts and look at serving sizes, because sometimes we're surprised by our serving sizes. Sometimes we're eating more than we actually realize. I'm going to pause for a minute. Was there any questions that we needed to address at this point? No? Okay. All right, this is great. Now I'm going to bring in lovely Becca. She's going to do our culinary portion of our program today.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Now that we've talked about the protein and the dairy food groups, as well as learning about the good and bad fats that are available to us, we're going to talk a little bit about food safety before we jump in our recipe for today. So when we're talking about shopping for proteins, really food safety starts at the grocery store. So when you're trying to select which products you're going to purchase, look for meat packages that are tightly wrapped and are cold, not ones that have wandered away from the meat section. And oftentimes at grocery stores, they will often provide a plastic bag, almost like a produce bag, next to the meat section in case you want to go ahead and stick your package of chicken or ground beef in that plastic bag so it doesn't contaminate anything else in your cart. The next step of food safety is keeping those frozen items frozen and those cold refrigerated items cold until you can get them back into the freezer or the fridge at home. Might even be a good idea to keep a insulated grocery bag in your vehicle, especially now that it's getting a lot hotter. Some grocery stores will even allow you to take a small ice pack with you if you've got a lot of cold or frozen items. And then keep an eye on those freezer and refrigerator temperatures at home to make sure that they're staying at the proper levels. When you're preparing your protein items, especially our raw meats, make sure to wash your hands often, sanitize your countertops and your stovetop often while you're cooking, wash your hands often, especially in between handling raw meats. A couple good tips, if you're preparing both produce and meat items, maybe prepare the produce items first so that you don't have to wash the cutting board in between. You're not having raw meat residue anywhere that could get on your fresh produce. You could also have a separate cutting board, especially saved for your raw meats, maybe something that's brightly colored or something that you'll remember easily. And it's also a good idea to have a bleach sanitizing solution around the house. This is a very inexpensive way to sanitize in between having raw meat and other ingredients out on the countertop. So you can see the recipe there on your screen. Store it for about a month and make sure to use rubber gloves when using that solution. So those are some good food safety tips for preparing. Now, while we move on to cooking, we want to make sure that we're cooking our food to the proper temperatures. So different meats have different temperatures that they need to reach, and we want to use a food thermometer to measure that. Make sure to wash that thermometer in between each use. So the different types of meats you will see on the next slide here have different temperatures that they need to reach in order to be considered safe to eat. I won't read all of them for you there, but you can use it as a reference, and we will make sure to send out these slides after the presentation. And another thing to note on this slide is that especially leftovers need to be reheated to 165 degrees. So that's something we don't always think about when we're thinking about safe temperatures. All right, we're gonna jump into our recipe here. I'll leave it up on the screen for just a minute so you can kind of check it out and get an idea of what ingredients we're gonna use today. We're going to make black bean and vegetable quesadillas. This is a Cooking Matters recipe. I know Cheryl referenced the Cooking Matters website before. You could go to cookingmatters.org and they have a wonderful library of recipes that you can search that are healthy options that are usually inexpensive to prepare. So this recipe can be found there. So we'll use some really fresh ingredients today, and the protein that we're going to highlight today is one of those great plant-based proteins that Cheryl mentioned, black beans. So here we've got our ingredients, and we are going to use that optional spice mix today. So you can see it's cumin, coriander, garlic powder, and onion powder. And then we'll briefly show the directions on the next slide here. All right, so we've got a few steps to go through. I'll walk you through them, but afterwards you will have this recipe to use as well. You can also find these handouts listed on the Eventbrite page. There should be a link under the kind of video box that pops up. All right, so let's jump into our recipe. We'll bring you back into the kitchen here, and I'll walk you through the steps of this recipe. Awesome. Okay, so I've got all of my ingredients prepped here so that you don't have to watch me cut a bunch of things up, but I will talk about each ingredient as we add it to our recipe. To begin our recipe today, I'm going to heat our pan. That's going to take just a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and warm that up for us so that we will have it ready when we are ready to put the oil in. So we're going to use a heart-healthy canola oil. This is a nice fat that will handle the high heat of the skillet very well. Once we have that ready, we're going to add our optional spice mix. You can see we've got it all in a bowl here ready to go. So once that's heated up, we will allow the oil to heat up as well before we add our spices to the mix. And while we're waiting for that to happen, I wanted to show you what I did to my zucchini. So we've got a few vegetables in here with our black beans. Zucchini is one of them. And I chose to grate it today. I used a box grater. So you may have one of these at home. You might have a different version. It was so easy and fast. It's probably the fastest thing I've ever grated. So you can see I've grated it here. Zucchini has a ton of moisture. So I'm going to show you a little trick to get some of that moisture out so that it doesn't make your quesadilla filling really soggy. What you can do is take a towel, a clean towel, maybe not your favorite towel, but a nice clean towel. And I'm going to go ahead and put my zucchini right on this towel here, right in the middle, because you're going to kind of ball it up a little bit. And you're going to get all the moisture out of this by wringing it out. So have another container. I'm going to use a clear container so you can see how much moisture I get out of the zucchini. But kind of pull together the edges, and you're going to give it a good squeeze. You can kind of twist it at the top and get some more moisture out. This will be so much better than if you were trying to let it sit in a colander. It just doesn't get as much out. You can't squeeze as hard in a colander. So not the juiciest zucchini we ever had, but we got some moisture out here. Let me get my oil heated up while I'm finishing this up. All right, give it another good squeeze while we've got a minute. And you'll see that it turns the towel a little bit green. So again, not your favorite towel, but it will wash out pretty well. Okay. I'll show you here. You can see we've got a little bit of liquid there in the bottom. A little bit of moisture that we got out of there. All right, so our oil is heating up nicely. We are going to add our spice mixture. It does call for a little bit of cayenne pepper. If you don't like heat, you can keep that out. Not required. You could also mess around with some other spices that you prefer. This has kind of a Tex-Mex flavor to it. We're going to let those spices kind of sit around in the oil a little bit and really open up. Kind of bring those flavors out. All right, so we're nice and warm. We're going to go ahead and add our zucchini. So at this point, you can just dump it right out of your towel. Could put it in a separate bowl if you'd like, but we're going to save a step. Okay. So we'll get our zucchini cooking here in the oil and spice mixture. It'll take a few minutes. You want it to really soften. So give it about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how hot you're cooking here. All right, so we've got that coated pretty well. Everything's mixed up, and we're gonna give it just a minute to saute. All right, while that's cooking, I'll talk about some of our other ingredients. We have corn and spinach that we're going to add next. For corn, you could use fresh, frozen, or canned. Your preference, whatever you have on hand, whatever's easiest. Today we're using canned corn. So we did drain it and rinse it. We also use no salt added corn. So if you're concerned about sodium, you want to go ahead and get the no salt added. And even if there is a little bit of salt, if you rinse it off, that's going to help out a lot. So you can always rinse the extra sodium off of your canned foods. For our spinach, again, you could use fresh, canned, or frozen. If you use frozen spinach, you'll want to kind of strain it out like we did. You can use that same trick with the towel to kind of squeeze out that moisture. But today we're going to go ahead and use fresh spinach like it says in your recipe. So I got baby spinach, so we don't really need to cut this up a little at all. You could if you wanted to, but I chose not to. It's going to cook down pretty well. So that's going to be the next thing that we add to our skillet here. I know you can't smell this, but it smells very good. This is one of my favorite Cooking Matters recipes. I regularly add this into our rotation of dinners at home because it's easy enough to make this filling and save it for leftovers throughout the week. If you want a quick bite to eat, you can just have this separately and then add your cheese and tortilla later on. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add our corn. Really cooking now. And we'll go ahead and give that a quick stir because this spinach is going to take up a lot of space. But you'll see how quickly the spinach cooks down. It wilts a lot. If you cook with greens at all, you know that a little bit of spinach does not go a long way when cooking. So it's going to reduce down to more than half the size of this. So we'll go ahead and add this in. And we'll want to give this a good stir again. Get that out of the way. So we'll go ahead and mix this up into the corn and our zucchini mixture. Got our spices in there still. Smelling really good. A little bit hard to manage first since there's so much volume, but once you get it incorporated, it will really start to cook down. My skillet's a little big today, but if you have a lid, you could go ahead and put a lid on top of this to help it wilt a little bit faster and combined with the zucchini and the corn. When you're making this recipe, feel free to add in your own favorite ingredients. I feel like some bell pepper or some onion would be really good in this. You might have to cook those a little bit longer or maybe at the beginning of your cooking process. But that would add some really nice crunch and flavor. You'll notice there's no meat in this recipe. We're using our plant-based protein. And so you could add some chicken if you wanted to or some beef. That would be great as well. Add a little bit of more protein. All right, so it's getting pretty good. We'll give that just a few more minutes, and while we wait for that, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do to our black beans. So black beans are the bean of choice for this recipe. We're adding about a half a can. If you wanted to put the whole can in there because you've already opened it, go for it. It's just going to bulk up the insides of your quesadilla a little bit, and you'll have a little bit extra. But we're going to take these black beans, and I'm going to use a fork to smash these just a little bit. And what this will do is this will help them from rolling around inside of our quesadilla. It'll add a little bit more of a paste-like substance to our corn, zucchini, and spinach. And it'll just help hold everything together a little bit better. So you don't have to blend it into a paste, but mushing it just a little bit with the fork is pretty easy. All right, those are about good. About half of them are mushed, half are still whole. It's looking pretty good. All right, so I'm going to make sure this is done because we're going to want to take this off of the heat before we add the beans. And you'll notice there's a couple optional ingredients on your recipe as well, parsley or cilantro. and I chose cilantro for today's recipe. But again, you could leave those out or add them in, whatever your preference. I know some people have very strong opinions about cilantro. So we've got our mixture looking really good here. You can see the spinach has wilted down almost completely. Looks like there's almost as much spinach as there is corn in here. Okay, so again, like I said, we're going to turn the heat off. I'll show you a little bit about what this looks like. Beautiful, colorful. When we do this recipe in our live cooking classes, people are surprised at how much they like it with all of these vegetables in it and there's not a whole lot of protein. They're thinking they're not going to like it because they're used to the cheese and the meat quesadillas. But this is so delicious. All the flavors go together very well, and you hardly know you're eating a whole lot of vegetables. Okay, so now that our heat is off, this is the time we're going to add our black beans and our optional cilantro or parsley. And again, I chose cilantro for today. Thought it went well with my Tex-Mex optional seasoning. And we'll give it a quick stir to incorporate it all. If your filling here isn't sticking together very well, you could add a little bit of water, like a teaspoon or two, in order to help everything kind of make more of a paste. And especially since we squeezed out that zucchini, not a whole lot of moisture in here today, but I think it will work just fine. So again, we're going to try to incorporate that cilantro completely, and our black beans, distribute those evenly throughout. And then we're going to start assembling our tortillas. All right, that is a good amount of filling to make several quesadillas. So again, before we get started here building our quesadillas, I'll grab my tortillas here. I'm going to go ahead and heat our pan so it's ready when we're ready to add it helps if I push the right button. Okay, here we go. We're going to warm our skillet up, not too high, medium-high heat. And the tortillas we're going to use today are whole wheat tortillas. This will help you if you're familiar with your MyPlate. They recommend getting half of your grains as whole grain. So this is whole wheat, a whole grain tortilla. If you have some dietary restrictions and you need to use corn tortillas, I prefer mine on corn tortillas, but whatever your preference. Today we're going to use whole wheat. So what we're going to do to assemble these is we're going to kind of make a pocket out of the quesadilla. So we're going to add the filling on one half, put a little cheese on top, and then fold it over before we add it into our skillet. And today's cheese, we're using a reduced fat sharp cheddar. The flavor goes a long way in the sharp cheddar, but we don't get that high fat content that we were trying to reduce in our diets. All right, so looks like our pan is heating up nicely. Once we're ready to put our tortilla on, we'll add a little bit of cooking spray so that our tortilla does not stick to the pan. You don't want to fill this because then you're just going to be playing catch up with your filling the whole time. But you don't want to leave it too empty either. So you'll get the hang of it after you make one or two tortillas. All right, so we've got that in there. Our mashed beans are helping to hold everything together. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of cheese to the top. It doesn't seem like a lot, but again, with that strong flavor, it's going to go a long way. All right, so we'll use our spray on the pan. We'll let that warm just a little bit. Anytime you add oil to a pan, you want to let it come up to temperature before you add your vegetables. Otherwise, the vegetables will just soak all of that oil up instead of using it for the cooking purposes. Okay, so again, we're going to want to fold this in half, kind of press it together a little bit before you add it to the pan so that it doesn't fall apart once you add it. If you're anything like me, you're not a very good flipper. I don't flip things well, so let's hope it holds together. All right, we'll add this to the pan. And again, I've got enough filling to make several of these, but I'm going to make just one for you for demonstration today. And Cheryl will come over here in just a little bit and taste test it for me, make sure I did it right. But while we're waiting on this to warm up, I'm going to give it a few minutes on each side. You want the tortilla to be nice golden brown. You can use your spatula to kind of give it a little pressure to help it hold together. So we'll give it a few minutes on each side. But while we're doing that, I want to show you a little Cooking Matters secret tip for your sauce. Sure, a little bit about our dairy products and how we reduced fat dairy products. Well, if you're a fan of sour cream, you know that it has a lot of fat in it. And I know we usually have sour cream with our Tex-Mex food. But today we're going to use a non-fat Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, with salsa mixed together to make a wonderful cream sauce for this quesadilla. And so we've got about equal parts salsa and Greek yogurt, and we're going to just give this a quick stir, and this is going to be our dipping sauce. You won't even know that it's not sour cream. It's got that tanginess that we want from sour cream, the creaminess, but a lot less fat. And you're still getting a little dairy in there too. Good probiotics and good protein also. All right, so that's nicely mixed. We're going to have that ready for Cheryl when she comes over to test our quesadillas. Were there any questions that came up while we're waiting on our quesadilla to finish up here? Give this a few more seconds on this side here. After this virtual workshop here, we will send out an email with the handouts if you weren't able to access those via Eventbrite, and we will also have a recording of this workshop available. I know we were having a little trouble with our Zoom link there at the beginning, but I think we got it working. We got several people attending now, which is fabulous. We're glad to have you here today. So I'm going to give it a flip. We'll see if this works. There we go. All right. It held together. I was nervous. All right, if a few pieces come out, just shove them all back in. And again, we've got a nice golden brown color on that first side. We'll give it just a couple minutes here. You could start making some more. Again, we take our tortilla. We'll load it up with filling on half. And we add the cheese on top, about 2 tablespoons. That's going to be plenty to hold this together and give us a nice flavor with that sharp cheddar, reduced fat. If you buy it in a whole block instead of buying the shredded cheese, it will be a lot more economical, and it takes just a little bit of time to shred. You can shred that just only as much as you need at a time. And again, we've got this on deck for the next one that comes up. So we'll have that ready. Looking really good here. I think we're about done. When we take it out of the skillet, we'll cut it into a few pieces depending on who's eating it. You might want 3 or 4 if you have a lot of little mouths to feed, or you might want to do just 2. Sometimes it can be easier to handle in smaller pieces. All right. We'll go ahead and turn that off. I'll make the rest of these later. It's going to be pretty hot when it comes off the skillet, so be careful before you take that first bite. And you can use a pizza cutter if you've got one handy. I didn't, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my chef's knife. Again, you can cut it into 2 pieces or 3. 4 might be a little bit of a stretch, but we'll go ahead and do 2 here today so we don't lose too many of our insides. We can put it on our plate and serve it up with a little bit of our Greek yogurt and salsa sauce. And if Cheryl will come over here, she can get a good taste test and let me know how I did. I know Cheryl loves this recipe too, one of our favorite Cooking Matters recipes. Looks really good. We'll see what she thinks. Again, it might be a little hot, so we won't make her take too big of a bite. I think she likes it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual workshop. Please stay tuned for more virtual workshops from us. You can visit our Eventbrite page at TarrantAreaFoodBank.eventbrite.com. Follow us on social media for current food distributions, and we've got a lot of great resources on our website as well. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.